Your gut contains more neurons than your entire spinal cord, over 500 million of them, wired into a mesh so intricate scientists call it the second brain. It can act, react, and even remember completely independent of the brain in your skull. And most of what it decides, you'll never consciously know about. Most people assume gut feeling is just a figure of speech, a metaphor for intuition, nothing more. That's not quite right. Your gut isn't speaking in metaphors, it's speaking in neurons. Start with the anatomy because it's stranger than it sounds. Lining the walls of your digestive tract is a structure called the enteric nervous system. It stretches from your esophagus all the way to your intestines, and it's built from the same type of tissue as your brain. The same neurons, the same neurotransmitters, even some of the same supporting cells. Doctors first mapped this system in real detail in the late 1990s when neuroscientist Michael Gershon published a book that gave it its now famous nickname, the second brain. Gershon found that this network could keep working even when every connection to the skull brain was completely severed. Cut the wire entirely, and your gut keeps digesting, keeps moving food along, keeps making decisions. It doesn't need permission from above. It never did. That alone would be strange enough. But here's the part that upends everything we thought we knew about the body. The connection between your gut and your brain isn't a one-way street. For decades, the assumption ran in a single direction. Your brain sends signals down to your gut, telling it when to digest, when to feel sick, when to feel full. But researchers eventually asked an obvious question nobody had tested. How much of that signal actually flows the other way? The answer, when it came, was almost unbelievable. Roughly 90% of the signals traveling along the vagus nerve, the main highway connecting your gut and your brain, run from the gut upward, not from the brain downward. Your stomach isn't just receiving orders, it's the one giving most of them. That means when you feel anxious before a big event and your stomach twists into knots, the causation might be backwards from what you'd expect. Your gut isn't only reacting to your anxiety. In many cases, your gut may be generating it, and your brain is simply receiving the report. In 2011, researchers in Ireland ran an experiment that made this connection impossible to ignore. They fed mice a specific strain of gut bacteria, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, and measured their behavior in stress tests afterward. The treated mice showed dramatically lower anxiety and produced less stress hormone than untreated mice. Then the researchers severed the vagus nerve, the connection between gut and brain, and repeated the experiment. The effect vanished completely. The bacteria could no longer influence behavior at all because the wire carrying the message had been cut. The gut wasn't just along for the ride, it was steering. And this is where the story gets even stranger because your gut doesn't just influence mood indirectly through nerve signals. It manufactures the chemistry of mood itself. Roughly 90% of the body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with happiness and emotional stability, isn't made in your brain at all. It's produced in your intestines. Your gut also produces meaningful amounts of dopamine, the molecule behind motivation and reward. None of this chemistry was designed for your emotions in the way we usually imagine. Most of it exists to regulate digestion, movement, and the immune system living in your intestinal lining. But your brain doesn't get its own separate supply. It shares a chemical language with the second brain, whether it wanted to or not. So, when scientists started looking at conditions like depression and anxiety, they found something they hadn't expected. People with irritable bowel syndrome are significantly more likely to also experience clinical anxiety and depression than the general population. For years, doctors assumed the gut symptoms were caused by the psychological ones, stress upsetting the stomach, but the newer evidence suggests it very often runs the other way. An unhealthy or imbalanced gut can be an early driver of the mood disorder, not merely a symptom of it. This isn't just a modern discovery dressed up in new language. Cultures across history have described this same intuition long before anyone had a name for the enteric nervous system. Ancient Chinese medicine described the gut as a second center of emotional processing, thousands of years before Western science caught up. Countless languages independently developed phrases that tie the stomach to emotion. Butterflies, gut-wrenching, a knot in your stomach. Nobody coordinated on that phrasing. Every culture arrived at it separately, because every human body was quietly sending the same signal the whole time. So, here's what it actually means to have a body. You've always pictured yourself as a single mind, giving orders from a command center in your skull, with the rest of the body simply following along. That was never accurate. You are, and always have been, run by two brains in constant negotiation. one that thinks in language and images, and one that thinks in chemistry and instinct, buried in your intestines, older than words, and talking to you every single day. Next time you feel a gut feeling before you can explain why, don't brush it off as a metaphor. That sensation is 500 million neurons, older than your conscious mind, that have already made up theirs.